Tollefson, and welcome to my studio. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today is going to be a great one. Have you ever tried painting watercolor on Yupo paper? Have you done that at all? I have not, and today is the day. I'm so excited. It's Dena Tollefson. I'm really glad that you're here. And today it's going to be really, I think, for me, a big experiment. I've never done this Yupo before. And oh, and I see that Dietrich is here. Thank you everyone for joining. I see that Dietrich is here, Bill is here, Helen is here. And for all of you that are watching, I really appreciate your support and appreciate that you're here. So if you'd like to chat in the chat, I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to be quiet, that works too. So leave me a comment if you've got any questions afterwards. This is going to be a lot of fun. So here are materials for today. We're going to be using watercolor brushes. These happen to be black velvet silver watercolor brushes. And then these are just a couple of examples. You may have been on previous live streams where you've seen me paint on standard arches, just regular arches watercolor paper. Here's one I just recently did one on painting trees. And oh, and I see that Davy is here. Welcome, Davy. Davy Art with a Pen. But here's the arches paper I normally use, and for those of you who are watercolor artists, I can imagine that you're all familiar too with the standard, just a regular 140-pound cold pressed, and it also comes in a hot pressed paper from Arches, and other brands make it as well too. But it's got a little bit of a texture on it. But this is actually made from cotton. So this is made, or I think it's from cotton. Wait, is it cotton? Oh yeah, okay, 100% pure cotton. But you can get other watercolor papers that are made from trees. So this is the Yupo paper. So let's get this out here. So I read that Yupo was invented in the 1990s as a way to come up with, in Japan by two different companies, as a way to come up with an alternative to standard watercolor paper. And the company that I got it from here is, so Yupo is a branded thing, and Legion Papers is the one who is providing, or who I got this paper from. I bought the paper. I'm not sponsored by Legion, but this is where I got it from. And it comes in different things. So you can get heavyweight, and this is the one I got. This is a 100 and, let's see, what is this one? 144 pounds, and the size I got was 11 by 14. You can also get it, it's made of polypropylene, and it's 100% recyclable. But let's just open this up here. And if you notice, so regular watercolor paper does not have any sheen to it, but the Yupo does. It's got a little bit of a sheen, and it's very, very, very smooth and slick. So I did a community post, and I asked people who have used Yupo before, what do they think of it? It was kind of a split thing. Some people are like, what the heck is Yupo? Some people were like, I've used Yupo before and I love it. And then there were other people who said, not so great. So I'm a little bit nervous about using the Yupo, but today is a learning experience, and I love to learn new things. So this will be a lot of fun. All right, so let's get set up here. All right, and I'm going to just put down a board. So this board I'm putting down is just a little canvas board, and I've got a thing just to level this out here and make it all even, and so we're not tilted in space. And let me see, and I'm using a new microphone. It was a gift from Helen and Dietrich Schaefer for Christmas, and hopefully you can hear me well with this new microphone. Let me know in the comments if you can hear with that. Okay, so Davey, you're saying that Yupo, you're going to check it out. Yeah, exactly. And then let's see, Helen is saying hello, and Dietrich is saying hello. Yeah, so Dietrich, I am also wondering what this paper is going to be like. What are we going to do? And I've shown extreme restraint by not painting on it yet. All I did was I took one sheet out, and then I've drawn a sketch. What I thought we could try and do is, these are some dahlias. I've been wanting to paint some dahlias, and these are kind of an unusual looking dahlia. The brand, or the name of it, is called Joe Swift dahlias. They have white petals, and then a yellow inside. And I thought that would be kind of a neat way to kind of test and see the white of the paper, that type of thing. Now, one thing, the first thing I'm noticing is I'm going to put this piece of watercolor paper down. I can do it, it doesn't move a lot, but this Yupo kind of slides all over. And I did read that what you can do is, oh, and Helen, you're saying that you can hear very well. Oh, Dietrich is saying the thing. Okay, so when I was little, there was this book called Alfred, but we changed the name to Tony. And there was this thing where he said, don't be discouraged with things you can't do. Things worked out for Tony, and they'll work out for you. And I always thought that was the most wonderful thing. I said that to my kids, and I'm going to have to start saying that to my granddaughter, too. But I'm going to just grab a little bit of clean water. What I read was that in order to get your Yupo to just stay and behave and stay still on your surface, you can take a little bit of water and then hold it. Oh yeah, it does stick. Look at that. Wow. Okay, it's not moving at all. So I'm actually going to have to pick it up and finagle it here over. Okay, there it is. Yeah, so my goodness. Now it is absolutely holding tight. And I'm using this other board here because in case we get sloppy with the paint, I don't want paint going all over the place. And I also want to be able to pick up the board and move it a little bit. So that's why I'm attaching it to this little board. But there's one thing that I did read about Yupo, and I've got a list also of things I thought we could talk about, is I have these questions of things that I've read and comparing Arch's watercolor paper with Yupo. So warping when wet. This is a big problem with standard watercolor paper. And you can even see on this little piece that it's kind of buckly. And in order to get it really, really flat, you have to put water on the back and then press it in between books for weeks to get it completely flat. Yupo, I have read, does not warp at all, even when it's wet, when it's dry, that type of thing. But we'll test all these things. Absorbing color. Can we dry it with a heat tool? Can you clean it with a Q-tip? And then what's the price? So let's go through all of those things here today, and let's get started now. So I'm going to take a little bit of water, and let's start a little bit on the background. And let's do right along the edge of our flowers. Let's go ahead and get this wet, which is plain water. And I'm going to follow along the contours of these petals. So let's get this part wet here and see what happens if we just apply some watercolor. Now normally, in fact, what I'll do even over here is I've just got a scrap piece of watercolor paper here somewhere. There we go. Here's a scrap piece of watercolor paper. I'm going to just get an area wet, and just for comparison's sake, let's just put some stuff here and put some stuff here, and let's see, just as an experiment, what's the difference or what happens. So going into, I've got our watercolors here. Let's start with a nice French ultramarine. So let's just get this going in here, and let's put a drop on the watercolor paper. Let's put a drop on the Yupo and see what's happening between them. And we'll put a couple of marks here. Interestingly, we're getting almost like a snowflake effect with the watercolor paper where it's kind of absorbing and moving out, because when you put watercolor pigment on wet paper, then it will travel. So this area is right now dry. Let's put a little bit of dry pigment and see what that looks like on the Yupo. It looks like we can see our brush marks. See that? And let's put here, this part of the paper is dry on the watercolor paper. Wow. It makes an interesting difference. This kind of smears a little bit. Let's put the color, I don't know if I necessarily like that smeared look. Let's just kind of do a little area here. And you can see every brush mark is showing, which is maybe good or maybe maybe bad. It can make kind of an interesting texture effect. And then let's just do that same thing over here with the watercolor paper. So I'm used to this effect, but I am not used to this effect. This is kind of interesting. The other thing I want to experiment with is I have read that you can move your Yupo, move it around, physically like turn it or move it or blow it with a straw, do things like that, and the color will move. Now, on the watercolor paper, I'm going to move that, and it is not moving at all. And then, so the Yupo, oh, Dietrich, the Yupo paper is this one here on the left. And then the just scrap of watercolor paper is this one right here on the right. Good question. Okay, so now let's tilt our Yupo paper, and it's not really moving much. If we add more water to our watercolor paper and tip it around, see if we can move it, and let's add more water to the Yupo paper and see if we can get it to move around. And yeah, it readily moves. Look at that. We can also see some granulation things. So to me, it's interesting that we can get kind of like this smeary effect, but we can also get kind of a loose and watery effect over here. I find that kind of interesting. So I do know we can go ahead and mark this off on here, that this is a no and this is a yes as far as warping when wet. And absorbing color, the Arches watercolor paper, absolutely yes, it does absorb color. The Yupo, it just sits on the top. It is completely non-absorbent. Now, if you're using something like alcohol inks or something like that, those would sit on the top but then dry, and they could dry permanently. But watercolor, we could just wipe this off. So let's move this over here. And oh, hey, Elf has joined us. And happy Friday. So the paints I'm using, okay, so the maker of the paints that I'm using here, Davey, is this one. Let me get my watercolor chart here. Okay, so this one, we used this blue. This is a Winsor and Newton French ultramarine that we have here. And then that came just right out of a tube. And in this pan here, I've got Holbein. Also, we've got Holbein, for example, the cobalt blue. That one's a really pretty one, this cobalt blue. That's over here. Let's see, that's this. Oh, this guy right here is the cobalt blue. So let's try a little of the Holbein cobalt blue. Let's try a little bit of that, just kind of play with it a little bit. Let's see what happens if we put this also and just kind of put it over here where the water was wet, and over on our just regular watercolor paper in the wet area, previously wet area. Let's just kind of put some dots and see how that reacts. In fact, I'm going to put on here so we can tell which is which. I'm going to mark on here and say that this is watercolor paper. This is Arches, 140 pound, that we have right here. So this is the Arches over here, and then here is the Yupo that we're experimenting with. Already I can see an interesting effect that if you put this blue in here where it's very wet, then look at that. It kind of moves and it travels, and when we put it on the previously wet area of the Arches paper, it is just kind of sitting there. So that's kind of interesting. What I want to try now is I'm going to get more of let me go in with some clean, here's a bucket of clean water. Let's go in and now let's go ahead and work a little bit more on our painting. Let's get this more wet and come in here and outline all where our flower is. I'm going to move the Arches paper off to the side Let's see if we can work a little bit more on the painting. Now that we're kind of getting a feel for what this stuff is doing, I want to see if we can get some more interesting effects. And let's get some water, just plain water, over here. And then we have a stem and then a leaf. So on our background, so this is called a negative space painting when you paint the background. But I'm curious, so curious to see what the effect would be. And then also, if we want to try and control the paint in this other area, can we get it to control, or is it just going to be kind of like the Wild West? You know, Elf just did recently did a video with the Wild West, a series he and I think he had gone with his wife to explore the West. And some areas where, I'm trying to remember, Elf, what was the name of that location again? It was a area where they do a lot of filming for sci-fi and different westerns were filmed there. But I am thinking we don't want our painting to be the Wild West, or maybe we do. Maybe we want to have like an uncontrolled wild event. I normally work in layers when I do watercolor, which means that I'll paint and then let that layer totally dry. And then after it dries, I'll go in and then either using a heat tool. So here's my heat tool. I'll either use a heat tool with it, or I'll go in and let's put some, let's try another color too. Let's try this cobalt over here. I like what that, or was this the cobalt? Which one was this one? The cobalt, the Holbein cobalt. Let's put a little bit more of that in here and let these colors really go to town. So I think it looks kind of interesting when the colors are mixing. All right, so I'm just thinking about our background of our flowers here. Let's get more pigment up next to the flower. So I'm being careful to not paint inside or get that wet right where the petal is. And if we can kind of maybe outline or go near the petal, then the painting might reveal itself here a little bit more. All right, so over here we have more of the petals going up in here. And I'm going to tip the paper a little bit and just kind of see what happens if we tip the paper. We can get our colors to go together. Now this area over here, so the thing about Yupo is supposedly it will dry, and then I'm going to see if I can just kind of put something on top that's already wet on this area where we just put the color. The paper was not wet first, but we just applied color in there. And then now let's also, just to get some color interest. Okay, and then, oh, and let's see. Okay, so, oh, Artsy is here. Yes. Okay, so the challenge is next week, Artsy. So what it is it's going to be the Snow Art Challenge. And everybody should upload their snow artwork featuring snow or including snow, and then upload that on the 20th. So today's the 13th of January. Upload that on the 20th, and then everybody who's included, I'll put on a playlist on my channel. And let your friends know too, because the more variety we get of participants, I think it's the more interesting and the more fun. Let's go ahead and add some of this. This color here is, what is this one? Let's see, I'm looking on my chart here. The Winsor and Newton Permanent Magenta. Okay, oh, and it's Elf's wife. Okay, so 3 hours south of Rena. That was it. Alabama Hills, Lone Pine, California. Okay, that's where that was all filmed. Elf, yes. But that was kind of the whole Wild West kind of a thing, right? All right, so let's get some more of this magenta. And I'm going to go right along. So I've got a leaf planned for right over here. Let's get something going right over here, and we'll start to kind of draw in where the other forms are. So let's just go in here, and basically we're outlining all the areas that I had drawn with the pencil. We're outlining and then just letting the color peek in and go up. There's a little area over here in between the flowers. And I can see that it's kind of behaving in a way. It's like where it's not wet, it seems to not be moving. So that's kind of a relief. I'll tell you, I was nervous with trying this Yupo about how much is this color going to move and what craziness is it going to do. And thankfully, it's not moving around too much. It's behaving somewhat. All right, so let's see, and I had a leaf over behind here. And then we had petals going up into here. So hopefully you can kind of see we're starting to get the reveal of our overall pattern of what our shapes and our colors. So let's go in now and see if we can paint a little bit of detail on the inside of our flowers. So I'm going to take the color here. Let's get a little bit of this yellow going here. So this is a Winsor & Newton Winsor Yellow Deep. And let's put this around the center of our flower. Just kind of loosely putting that in. And these Joe Swift dahlias, they have their pollen is really thick, and the pollen is also, I say, rather dynamic. So let's rinse the brush out and now dip into clean water, and I'll just wipe off my brush here. Now I want to go in and let's put in now a little darker color, the Winsor & Newton Winsor Orange. See if we can try and get the effect at how much this moves. I'm going to try and get the effect of shadow. So if we want our light coming from this direction, let's see if we can get a shadow effect over there. And see, I can see that this Yupo is really travels, the color really travels a lot. We'll get our pollen going out there, okay. Hobbit Wife says, thank you, Helen. Oh, that's great. Oh, hey, look, it's Megan is here. Megan, hello. And, oh, and Chrissy is here. Hi, Chrissy. And you know what, you guys, if I missed anybody, I'm painting away over here, and if I miss saying hello to anyone, I apologize. It is my intention to greet everybody and to see what you're saying. So let's try and get and Chrissy, I like that wolf that you just painted on that wolf video that you had that you just painted. It was very beautiful, the white wolf. And I'm thinking of Chrissy now as we're doing this green gold effect. So you can see, do you see how this color is like moving in? For those of us who are kind of tight painters, that's me, kind of tight painters, when we see this happening, this makes me distressed. I'm seeing this mixing that I don't want over here. If this was regular watercolor paper, this would not be happening. So I read that what you can do, green gold, yes, Chrissy, exactly. All right, so and Megan, Megan actually is doing a lot of collaborations recently. Megan, with your friend, and I hope that your friend is also going to do and all of you guys will be doing the Snow Art Challenge. So supposedly, and this is one of the things that I read, okay, so Q-tip clean. this is one of the things I wanted to check with the Yupo. Can we do a Q-tip clean with it? Um, let's try it. Let me set the chart over here. Let's try it, and then we're going to try and do a Q-tip clean on our regular, let me grab that regular Arches watercolor paper we were kind of goofing around with. Let me get a little of this green gold on the Arches paper and have it mingle, and then, whoops, you can't see it here. There we go. Let's get a little bit of the green gold on there, and then let's see if we can clean it up with the Q-tip or not. So I'm going to just take these Q-tips, and oh yes, look at that. Sure enough, you can get it makes kind of a squeaky sound as I'm doing it here. It's and coyotes, you're saying. Okay, and so Guild of the Flying Tortoise. And I love that name, Guild of the Flying Tortoise, Megan. That's a really fabulous name. Okay, so let's put the spent Q-tips off to the side here. I'm just going to see if I can just continue to wipe off and then get that color back under control. And over here, the way it's mixing, I actually don't mind how that looks. Well, I think we'll kind of leave that one where it is. But, okay, so a Q-tip test. So yes, we can clean the Yupo with a Q-tip. And let's see if we can get it all the way clean. I'm going to dip the Q-tip in water. And oh yes, can you guys see that? I can return to the white, to the original white of the Yupo paper. And that, I'll say that Yupo, let me get the thing back out again here. So the one that I bought was this 144 pound. You can also get it in, I want to say it was like 74 pound or it was something like that, a very thin sheet. And I got the one that is white. You can get a bright white. You can also get it in a translucent form. And I think the translucent would be kind of interesting if you put like something, maybe if you put something behind it. But let's now do and see, can I use a Q-tip and can I wipe off if there was an area we didn't want. Now it's still wet here. So I think let's try and see. So while it's still wet, we can get some of it off with the Q-tip. Let me get to be fair about it, let me dip the Q-tip here in water and see if we can get back. Yeah, look at that. We can get pretty close. It leaves a little bit of a stain, but we can, over here, there's like no staining at all. See that? We can take it off with the Q-tip. On the watercolor paper, I'd say we're getting kind of a mixed result. On this more dry area, let me see if I can lift that off with the Q-tip. Yeah, we can get it. Yeah, we're getting pretty good here with the ultramarine. It's not really staining. I can imagine that some of the pigments that stain more like the phthalo colors. Okay, so Chrissy, you're asking, what is the paper like? All right, so this paper is kind of crazy. It was developed in the 1990s, and then they started using it in the United States. So you're over in the UK. They started using it in the United States, or manufacturing it in the 2000s. But it is, let me see what it says here. It is made of 100% polypropylene. So if there are any chemists out there who can tell us it's 100% synthetic, so there are no natural materials in it, and it is also supposedly acid-free. It says it's acid-free and that you can use it suitable for watercolor, alcohol inks, and acrylics. It would be interesting I wonder if anybody's trying to paint oil on it. I did also read that there's kind of a nuance about it, is that you have to, or it can yellow over time. So, so some people over time, what they will do is they apparently will spray their Yupo with an acrylic thing. A lot of times, like an acrylic varnish or like a crystal clear. What people might do for varnishing, for example, varnishing an acrylic or also if you ever have just sprayed that over just regular watercolor paper. I'm not going to be doing that here. That seems like that's too much here, but let's see. Okay. All right. And so let me see what you guys are saying in the comments here. Okay. Yeah, it does work pretty well, Bill. It does. And then Megan said, I'm curious how long it will take the paper to dry. How long it's going to take to dry on this. Okay. Now I am leaning my head down and I can see, okay, and I'm going to try and tip this a little bit. Can you guys see? So it has to dry in the atmosphere. And this edge right over here, if I just tip it ever so slightly, can you see that this is now what looks to be dry? And then we have an area, a little spot over here that appears to be dry, also down at the bottom. And now look, when I've tipped it, I've now moved it into the area that's going to become a leaf. So let's do our test again with the Q-tip and see if we can reclaim this area. This is so interesting to work with this paper. Oh yeah, look at that. We can just kind of move the color out of the way and then reclaim that area. Now what I don't want to do now, I guess, is I don't want to try like I did before and put the wet next to the wet, because it looks like that just moves and kind of creates some craziness. Okay, yeah, the drying time. So what I read was that it has to air dry, so it will not, now supposedly, you are not supposed to use your heat tool on it because it will turn it into, and does anyone remember Shrinky Dinks from those things where you basically got plastic and then you heat it in the oven, you cut it out and you heat it in the oven, and you could make all kinds of fun things with that. So Shrinky Dinks back from those days. Yeah, Shrinky Dinks, oh my gosh. I loved the Shrinky Dinks. But apparently your Yupo will turn into that. I am not going to try and melt my Yupo here today, but apparently, you know, like normally, you can just take here's the water arches paper. You can just turn your heat gun on and just, you know, dry that and then do your next layer. But with this, we can't really do some layering. Now I'm going to try and now that this area that's dry over here, I'm going to see what happens if I put a wet brush on that. What happens? Let's just put a wet brush and let's see what happens to our color. Okay, and it looks like that activated. Oh yeah, because so do you see that? It did not, the layers below did not stay. They're now mingling, which is, I don't think that's great if we don't want it to be mingling. But if we wanted it to mingle, then that's a good thing. Looks like that's how we could get it going again. And yes, experimenting is so much fun. Oh my goodness. 30 minutes to dry isn't bad. Yeah, you know what, Megan, I agree with that. And then, yes, Helen, I think too that that it's going to be, you know, a thing with the oil paint. I think that would kind of make a sticky mess. That would be kind of actually fun to try that sometimes. And then the shrinkies. Oh my gosh, yes. All right, so Elf is saying what here? Drop some rubbing alcohol onto the paint and watch what happens. And okay, now I'm going to ask Bill to go and get. I have rubbing alcohol. Darling, can you please go into the laundry, and if you would go up into the cabinet and then you would get the spray bottle. I have a spray bottle of inks that I use when I do face painting at church. If you could get that, Elf said that we should try rubbing alcohol on that. So if Bill, if you can go and grab that for me while I'm here, let's see if we can try that. Okay, and then another would be the paper. Yeah, it doesn't cut or wrinkle, exactly. And that's like on our list here. So drying with the heat tool, let's put this on here. We're gonna say Yupo, we're gonna say no, and then we know for sure heat tool's great with the regular arches paper. Q-tip clean, yes. And then this is maybe. So you can do some, if it's like, sometimes we can clean it with a Q-tip, but we couldn't get it completely back to the pristine paper. And then we'll talk about price here, but let's get a little bit more. I am curious to see if I can get a little bit of detail in some petals. So let's go ahead and mix up a color. We'll get the Q-tip out of the way. And let's get some just plain water in a mixing tray. And let's get a little bit of, so to describe our dahlias in shadow, I thought I could maybe mix a little bit of a color. Let's get some of this, see if you can see the tray here. This color here, which is, looking on my list, Holbein Permanent Violet. Let's get some Holbein Permanent Violet in there. Okay. And then, oh, I hear someone coming. Okay, Bill is here. And you want to say hello, Bill? Just say hi.
Hello.
Okay, did everyone say hi to Bill? Okay, and look what Bill brought me. This is my alcohol that I use for disinfecting little kids. No, I don't spray it on them, obviously, but I spray my brushes when I'm doing for church. Once a year, we have this thing for trunk or treat. I don't know if you guys do that at all by your church, but it's like the kids come and then they do trunk or treat. So, all right, so what we're going to do, all right, let's see here. So Megan had a thought. Megan says, you could see the white gaps of paint don't hit. What if it's fully dry if you go with a marker and then draw little details? You know, that's a very good idea. In this area here we've got the alcohol ink. So Elf is suggesting let's give it a try. Let's spray. Oh my. Did you see what happened there? Look at these craziness. Ooh, I kind of like that. Ooh, Elf, that was a great idea. Look at what we made here. We made all kinds of interesting nuances. Oh my goodness. Look at that. So what's in here is it's rubbing alcohol. I think it's a 90% rubbing alcohol that normally is just, let's kind of spray. Oh my gosh, what a fun effect. If I spray this over on our watercolor paper, we're spraying the alcohol. Well, look, we did get some of that effect here, but we aren't getting a lot of it. It's not going crazy like it is here. Oh, what a fun effect that is. Look at that. Oh my, it's almost like Freeze Miser or Heat Miser came and then sprayed that. Okay, so let's get some color where we wiped off with the Q-tip. Let's see, it is pretty wild. Oh yeah, oh my goodness, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, the alcohol is amazing what it's doing in there. Now let's try and let's introduce another color. So on our color, and ooh, I can smell that alcohol is drying now. I'm not a drinker, so it's like hopefully my live stream isn't going to change now if I'm breathing breathing in the fumes. Let's get a little bit of this. Okay, so this color is our Winsor Newton Permanent Magenta. Let's just, a magenta, I think Chrissy, I think about Chrissy and say magenta. She has this way of saying it that's really fabulous. Okay, so let's just get some of the purple going here. And since we put purple here, the magenta, let's also just put it, let's fill in some of the gaps where we've got this gappiness. And what I'm seeing is that where we put, it looks like the alcohol acted like a resist. You see that? So if I'm putting this alcohol in, do you see that it's kind of like resisting off the paper? That's kind of interesting. All right. So anyway, when we were doing we were starting to do a little mix, and let's see if we can, oh, and look, now we're getting a little bit of bleeding of the alcohol coming in over onto the petal, and actually I think that looks nice on there, so let's leave that. But let's take the purple and let's add maybe a little bit of our orange in here, and then let's mix up a color that would kind of be the petals in shadow. And let's see if we can try and create some kind of a three-dimensionality in our flowers. So we'd have an area here, and I'm seeing that this is like tricky to do here with the Yupo. It doesn't, look at that, it doesn't really, ugh, it's kind of terrible. Oh my goodness. So normally if I was going to do a if I was going to do a flower and then paint a petal and just do like some shadowing, I would just go in and, shadow and shadow and shadow and it stays where you put it. But look at that. It's not behaving at all. Where we want it to behave. Maybe we just have to work it in a little bit. Or maybe somehow it interacted with the alcohol and it wants to resist. I don't know. Let's just see what we can do with a little bit of shading. Just because it seems kind of lame to just leave the flowers and not let them have any shadow effect. Let's see if we can get those here. And then let's try also to see, let's introduce a green. And I'll say that this looks just terrible, doesn't it? Look terrible with, well, maybe it's okay. Let's see how it dries. And now we got this is kind of a disaster. Oh, goodness. Look at this. The pollen has moved out onto the flower where we don't want it to go. But let's see if we can just get a little hint. Let me use the Q-tip. Let's try that. All right, Q-tip. Let's see if you can do your stuff here. And maybe we can also allow some of the blue because if the light would be shining and we'd be getting some shadows, we would be getting the color also coming, would be kind of a blue color. So let's just see if we can get a shadow effect here, adding a little bit of the blue onto where the petal would be curved. Oh goodness, look at here. Oh my goodness, this is like corralling a hamster that escaped from your hamster cage. He doesn't want to stay. When I was little, I had hamsters. My hamsters would escape, and then my father had to go and find them because they would get kind of wild. And then, but they would always go and hide. The hamsters would I always named the hamsters, they were females, but I named them male names. But these hamsters would go where the wrapping paper is. Go with the flow. Yeah, you know what, Elf? We're going to go with the flow here. And we're going to call it modern art. Exactly, Daddy. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness, here. It's like a naughty child. Yes, Dietrich. Yes, Daddy, it is. Oh my goodness. Okay, now we've got a little bit of a highlight on our leaves. Let's put in a dark area. So I'm going in here. What color? Let me get my color chart out here. So this green here, the Holbein sap green, and then we've got a hooker green. So I'm going to get a little bit of the Holbein sap green. And let's get that going over here for the bottom of our leaf and our stem. And then let's put it over here for the leaf. And I'm totally seeing when people are talking about how it won't stay put or it won't behave, I'm totally understanding that here with the Yupo. But I think what it can do though is do you see it's making some of these really fabulous forms that we aren't able to get, normally here. Let's see, oh, here, a leaf. There was a leaf planned for over here. Let's get him going again here. And then the colors are just kind of mixing right on the paper. I want to try and get rid of as many of the white areas that we have over here. Let's just try and cover the white areas so that the flowers stand out in a composition. So let's go in. I'm curious to see what this color is going to do. All right, so I have this favorite color here. Let me get it on, show you on my chart. This one is the Holbein turquoise blue, and I love working with that. It's kind of opaque. So let's try a little bit of that on our flowers. I want to try that over here and see what ooh, that's pretty. That's a pretty color. Let's go ahead and just put some of the turquoise in. And let's also go in closer to the flowers on the flower edges. And describe that a little bit better. see what we can do here, because I'm kind of liking the idea of the sharp edges in contrast with the the loose and organic forms that we're getting with this Yupo. So let's go in and define these edges a little bit more. And I'll say that trying to shade this thing is kind of a mess. Now let's go in with a dark. Let's get a nice deep dark color just for good contrast. We've got a couple choices here. We've got a choice of, we can either use a Holbein Indigo or a Winsor Newton Prussian Blue. Let's go with the Prussian Blue, which is not quite as dark and it's more blue looking. That's this guy over here. Okay, so Chrissy is saying, I wonder if brush-o crystals would disperse. It's a good question. And this is like an acrylic pour. This is kind of, it's craziness. And Megan is saying, it reminds of the, oh, you had a guinea pig named Trevor. Yeah. All right, so I had Hammy and I had Frederick hamster. So they were very nice hamsters. I won a Habit Trail hamster cage. Well, I didn't actually win the Habit Trail. I won some money playing bingo at the Indian Creek Country Club in 1970 something. It was in the early 70s, and I had a paper route, and I used this money that I got playing bingo at the country club, and I bought a hamster trail, a Habit Trail hamster. Like a retreat for the hamster, and the hamster goes in there. Well, what happened though, and Dietrich and Helen are on this, so you can attest to what happened. My hamster was clever, and he would eat through the, in the night, he'd become active, and he would eat through the Habit Trail home, and then he would go and escape. And so then my father, who is a retired engineer and electrician, but he would go and he would be stymied by this. Daddy, you remember this? When the hamster would go, then he would try and figure out, okay, what am I going to do now to like outsmart this hamster? So my father had come up with like a little, it was like a screw thing, so he would screw and nuts and bolts to hold the lid tight, because the hamster would get on his back. And in the night, he would go and like unscrew with his body, unscrew the lid of this Habit Trail. Let me know if you guys ever had a Habit Trail. It was like a big thing in I don't know if they still make the Habit Trail. You know what I'm going to try? I'm going to try and just take this blue and see if we can make some shadows, because it's driving me crazy that we don't have at least something going on for a shadow effect on the petals, that we only have the white. So I'm going to try this here. This is drying. I see that the color that we mixed is drying, but let's just see if we can do something here, because oh my gosh, this is just craziness that we can't get a shadow on the Yupo. I want to be able to get at least some level of subtlety with that, but let's see what we can do just using this Q-tip. So yeah, engineering runs in the family. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so Bill is an engineer. Our two children are engineers. And then I left a job in engineering when I was 47 to do art full time, and have been happily doing art full time. And you know what? This is not good here. Let me take the Q-tip and get rid of that. Looks like it can just, what's nice about this is, boy, the Q-tips just clean right up. So here where we've got some drabs and drips where we don't want it, I see what we can do now is we can just use this Q-tip, so it's like you can apply, it looks like you can apply subtleties if you kind of scrub it in and treat it like a marker. So let's go in now here. Now that we're trying that, let's get the dark, because the center of the Joe Swift dahlia has a dark, dark center. So let me set these Q-tips down. I'm going through all my Q-tips here. Good thing we have a big container. Bill and I always laugh because I always tell him that we have enough Q-tips and he doesn't need to buy more. And then sure enough, I end up using them all, and let's say we need more. Okay, so let's see what you guys are saying on the chat. And Frederick, yes, yes, Frederick was really something. Okay, and then, yeah, okay, Davy, thank you for saying that. Don't overwork it. It's easy to overwork it. Yeah, and yeah, and Elf's wife is an engineer. Okay, so let's just get a little dark. Yeah, and I agree with that, Helen. Let's get just a little bit of dark in our center, because the centers of these flowers are dark, and we're just going to let the color mix, and that's okay. We'll get a little bit more. So this is a purple, this purple color. All right. And I'm agreeing with you, Helen, that we don't want to overwork this. So let's go in and erase. Let's like try and, well, now if I erase it, what am I going to do now? This really is a giant experiment. Let's just try and soften that edge a little bit if we can with the brush. So let's put the brush and just let that happen. There, I think I like that better. Because what was happening is it was looking too contrived. We don't want contrived. And what looks like a big advantage of this Yupo is you can really go in and get it back. If there's an area you don't like, you can get it all the way back to the white of the paper, which is a huge disadvantage with standard watercolor paper. You can't do that. But it looks like we can do that easily here on the Yupo paper. And I want to give another spray over here of the alcohol. Really like that effect that we're getting with the alcohol. Yes, oh, that's funny. Imaginary friends. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Oh, Megan, I'm sorry about that. Yes, Dietrich and Helen are such wonderful parents. Been very blessed to have them. Absolutely wonderful. All right, so we'll do, looks like it's just a matter of just kind of teasing the color where you want it to go and then asking it to leave where you don't want it to stay. Looks like that's kind of the trick here with this Yupo. My goodness, this is kind of crazy. Look at it go. All right. So these marks down here where I was like obviously scrubbing are driving me crazy. This, for a person who likes a lot of control in their artwork, that's me. This Yupo is a little bit kind of crazy and it feels a little, I feel like a little out of control. But in a way, it's kind of pleasing, I guess. If you guys let me know your experiences, if you are watching later on the upload, you know, let me know what your experiences are with Yupo and what you think of it, what you thought of it. See, now here, this is migrating in here. But there, okay. Well, I feel like now we're starting to get a balance between organic and then just chaos and something somewhat controlled. So it's like, boy, a person can just kind of just play with this thing and then it kind of is it's its own thing. All right, so I want to just get a little bit more dark color down here, I guess, for our composition. Let's add a little bit more of our, let's see, that was the Prussian blue. So let's get a little bit more of that down here. Just so that we have an area of dark and an area of light. There we go. And I can see this is interacting also with the alcohol that's still trying to dry, that I can smell. I can smell as it's drying. There we go. Okay, now that's feeling more, that's feeling more like what we're looking for here. Let's get some of this purple, a little bit more of the purple down here. And just letting this color play on here now. And we'll go with purple. And then because I have used the orange in here, I do want to be sure, just for color balance, I do want to be sure to use a little bit of that same color elsewhere on the painting. So I'm going to just put a little bit of this here, just for balance. And then I like that little explosion that thing's making. So we'll turn that one into a little bit of a brown. That's good. And then here, let's just ask this one to move along over here. Okay, there we go. All right, well, this was a craziness, a crazy adventure in trying Yupo. So I hope that you guys give it a try, just for kind of kicks and grins and fun. And oh, hey, one last thing. I was going to talk about the price. Okay, so the price on this stuff. Let me see here. I wrote it down. Okay, so the arches, if you buy, so like I normally buy it, you know, in a pad like this. So the price for one 11 by 14 sheet, so you buy it in either groups of 10 or groups of 20, but the Yupo comes out to for a 11 by 14 sheet. It's kind of expensive in this size. Whoops, I got my wrong pen. In this size, because it's the super heavyweight, it's $3.33 per sheet in this super heavyweight. It's about half the cost if you buy the thinner one. And then the Arches paper, which is that 140-pound Arches paper, is $2.35 for a 11 by 14 sheet when you buy in like a group of 10 or 20 together. But that was the last thing that we wanted to look at on our list. So, all right, well, I want to thank you guys for joining me today in this fun and wild experiment with Yupo. And I hope to see you again on the next live stream or in the next video. So I hope that you'll like and subscribe and come back and see me again. So until next time, it's Dena Tollefson, and all my best to you. Bye-bye.